Hi, welcome back to Storytime with Dave Booker. I appreciate you being here. Look forward to doing these every 2 times every week. I apologize for the halo around me. That's not holiness. That's just sunlight. It's a nice day. I thought I'd take advantage of it. So today we're going to continue on with Sheriff in a Small Town, the next chapter, book 3. And today we're doing Murphy's Law. So sit back, relax, and let's get on it. Morgan and Julia were walking the town with Josh. The annual ice cream social was to be held the next day, and since the town was now a tourist attraction, the event had doubled in size. Visitors came days in advance to spend time in the quaint little small town that time forgot. The YMCA and YWCA were packed out, and hotels for miles were around for filling rooms. Town was busy for the first 2 days before the social, and businesses were thriving. As they passed the diner, the sight of people waiting outside to get in made a pleasant sight. The diner had the same menu they'd had since they'd opened. It wasn't a large menu, but the food was excellent and served fast. They usually hired extra help for the event week and made enough for those 3 days to give everyone a bonus and close down for a few days to recover. Hot Dog Hut was doing similar business. Morgan had streets blocked to control traffic and keep things moving. His years of experience as sheriff was paramount in making these events a success. He waved to Rocky and Talbot as they were walking on the other side of the street, keeping an eye on things. It wasn't use taking a squad car since traffic was so heavy. Rocky was back from his vacation and had taken over as sheriff, much to Talbot's relief. He kept Joe on for the week as an extra deputy to ensure someone was always on duty for the duration of the weekend. Joe had checked with his cousin, who was an assistant, and things were still slow despite the increase in people. He was considering adding Josh back also if Morgan couldn't spare him. Passing the general store, Rocky saw a man standing outside smoking a cigarette and looking bored. He was leaning against the corner lamppost, and while the posture was relaxed, the eyes were intent on the store's interior. Talbot was seeing the same thing. Case in the place, he murmured. Rocky nodded. Talbot ducked down an alley, and Rocky faded into the crowd of streetwalkers to take position across the street and behind the man. Talbot would arrive from the rear of the store and take position inside, hidden from view, but able to see the counter via the round mirror near the ceiling. Talbot signaled to Scott, who was stocking shelves, but doubled as their security officer, that a robbery was imminent. Scott repositioned himself to assist. Outside, the man had seen enough. Looking around, he felt the coast was clear. He entered with a hand in his right-hand pocket. He waited quietly along with the customers in line, and when he got to the counter, he came right to the point. Tossing a bag onto the counter, he barked, "Put all the cash in the bag, and quickly." Talbot saw the man enter, and while he moved forward in line, hand signaled Scott to position himself on the man's left while he came up on his right. The man still had his hand in his pocket. The gun was large, and while it was still pointing at the ground, Talbot grabbed the man's upper arm, putting pressure near the bicep while Scott reached in and pulled the gun out. Rocky had entered the door and hid in the shadow beside the postcard rack. As he had expected, another man was already inside, hovering near the door. As soon as he saw Talbot apprehend his partner, he drew his gun. As he was drawing it out, Rocky emerged and, using the butt of his sidearm, swung it crashing down on the man's wrist. The gun dropped and was picked up by Scott, who handed both weapons over to Rocky. Loud applause and laughter followed the arrest and continued as Rocky and Talbot walked their prisoners to the courthouse. Scott laughed at the comments of, "Great little show, really well acted. I thought there was a real holdup for the moment." Out-of-towners thought it had been a show put on for their benefit of visitors. Scott, on his way back to his stocking, explained it had been real. An older lady grabbed him at his arm. "What do you mean allowing thieves to try and hold this place up while there are people in here? That's dangerous." Scott stifled a laugh and did his best to keep a straight face. Man No one allowed them to rob this place. The sheriff and deputy, as well as myself, apprehended the two criminals swiftly and effectively so that no one got hurt. He turned to leave, but she wasn't through yet. Well, if the sheriff and deputy were so quick, they must have known something was going to happen. How could they be here so quick on the spot otherwise? She sniffed in a knowing way, sure that the sheriff and deputy had somehow known and were probably part of the gang of thieves. Hell, I'm going to talk to the mayor or whoever's in charge of this town. The town council building was across the street and identified by a large sign out in front. She pushed her way importantly through the crowd at the door and marched across. Stomping up to the receptionist, she demanded to know who was in charge. Ma'am, there are 7 departments to this building. Which person do you want to speak to? They let out a gasp of exasperation. Well, the person in charge of all of them. I want to see whoever runs this damn town. The receptionist called the mayor's office and informed him he had a visitor. Directed where the mayor's office was, the lady adjusted her hat for maximum effect, tucked her purse under her arm, and marched loudly to the mayor's office. Mayor Lucas was a shrewd man and saw any greeting would be rebuffed, so simply inquired what he could do for her. He offered her a chair, but she blocked his way to safety behind his desk. You want to fire whoever allowed 2 men to try and rob the general store. The mayor was all attention. Did they succeed? She felt the question was impertinent. No, the sheriff and deputy were fast on the spot. Too fast, if you ask me. Just as if they were part of it. Mayor Lucas had heard enough. He drew himself up to his full height and leaned so that he and the lady were nose to nose. So, our sheriff did his job. There was no successful robbery. Nobody got hurt because of the manner in which the criminals were apprehended. And you have the temerity to come in here and berate them because they did their job and did it well? They were on the spot because with so many people here, they were walking around ensuring peace and order. And you think because they did their job, that they were somehow part of the criminals that they apprehended? She poked a finger in his chest. Your arrest was probably all for show. When they got to the jailhouse, they probably split whatever they got. Lucas had had enough and slapped her hand away from his chest. Well, by your own admission, the robbers were apprehended before they received any money. The hell was there to split? He grabbed her by the shoulder and faced her toward the door. Get the hell out of my office, and if I see you here again, I'll have the sheriff arrest you for harassment of a government official. He stormed out of the office and stopped at the reception desk. Oh, this is the rudest town I've ever been to. I'm leaving, and I'm going to write a letter to the governor. She readjusted her hat, tucked her purse under her other arm, and marched out the door, barging through the crowded sidewalk. Morgan had seen enough of the main street and thoroughfares and headed to the park. Here was a bustle of activity that looked as if a 3-ring circus was in town. Railroad flat car had been repainted and banners were hanging and blowing in the breeze. Picnic tables were lined up carefully so that a maximum amount of people could relax. He checked the ice cream freezer and found it was not coming up to temperature, or rather down to temperature. Called into Joe at the courthouse and would have someone out to inspect and either repair or replace the unit. Checked the tables for the farmer's market. 2 had legs that were loose, and he pulled out his Leatherman and fixed them. Julia was tying ribbons around the corners of the tablecloths to keep them from blowing away. The ribbons also added a dash of color. People were already setting out their wares. Boughs of cherry and apple pies, jars of jams and jellies, and mounds of rolls. All these would go on sale early in the morning, so someone was going to be up all night preventing anybody from taking them. Morgan was carefully inspecting the different pies on tables and told Mrs. Nursebaum that the custard pies and chocolate cream had to go. They had no refrigeration. Mrs. Nursebaum did not take the news gently. She picked up a chocolate custard and threw it straight as an arrow at Morgan. Long experience had taught him how to evade something thrown at him. As he turned, he saw that Julia was now in line for being struck. Well, he did the only thing a dedicated husband could do in the circumstances. He took the pie in her stead. Julia stifled a giggle and went to the table, picking up a custard pile with lots of whipped cream. It landed on Mrs. N's head. Custard, cream, and crust slid down her shoulders and disappeared down her open-necked shirt. Most of the other vendors swiftly hid their products from under the, or hid their products under the tables, with others grabbing the disallowed pies and threw them at each other. Mrs. N had a hard time claiming her property as it was being flung hither and yon. Running out of pies, the gleeful participants looked around for anything else to use as a missile. Morgan brought out an old policeman's whistle and blew it with every breath he had. Enough! You folks better hope it rains tonight and cleans this mess up, or you'll be out here doing it yourselves. Some looked at the sky to gauge whether rain was probable. Well, rain looked doubtful, so they scooped up the remnants and disposed of them. Julia led Morgan to the water fountain, gave him a good cleaning as best as she could manage. The shirt was slightly stained, but it wouldn't show too much. She kissed her protector and tucked her arm in his. From the gate, members of the band arrived to set up their flat car to practice. Band leader Ken Murphy approached Morgan with a look of pride. Sheriff, this concert we're going to be playing some pieces we worked out ourselves. We'd greatly appreciate if you and your missus would take a listen and let us know what you think. He led them to a picnic table close to the stand, dusted it off with his handkerchief, bowed, and Julia sat next to Morgan with the realization that she hadn't just married a man, she'd married a title. Morgan had not held the job of sheriff in years, but to the town, Rocky might have been the acting sheriff, but Morgan was always and would always be the sheriff. She had heard people talking about them as a couple, and she wasn't Morgan's wife, she was the sheriff's wife. And with that title came responsibilities and obligations she had never expected. Sitting comfortably, they listened to the band play. They had created several marches, a lovely piece called the Society Waltz, and they were about to play a swing number called the Sentimental Ball when a gust of wind rose and took the pages, with it spreading them all over the field. Everyone within range was pulled in to help gather the sheets. Putting them in order once more would have to be done by the band, and several pages were last seen flying high in the air and far away. Murphy was sitting on the edge of the flat car, trying very hard not to burst into tears. With the pages brought together and delivered to the band, they all got down and took over half the tables. For the rest of the day, they would have to sort the sheets and separate the music by section. Morgan and Julia headed home for lunch. Over a bowl of homemade chicken soup and fresh baked bread, they worked out the afternoon's itinerary. Another walk to the park to check out everything once more. Maybe a stop at the hot dog hut for an appetizer before doing a final walk around town, checking on traffic flow. Checked over the radio to check if Joe had sent out the repair person for the ice cream freezer. Joe acknowledged he had. Morgan waited for more information. Well, what do you have to do? Quiet laugh came over the speakers. Flip the switch to on. He put a metal zip tie on the cover so nobody could turn it off again. Morgan was perturbed. He hadn't even thought to check that. Julia realized that if she was going to do another round about town, she had better change shoes. She liked wearing heels, but Morgan walked with long strides and she had to hurry to keep up. If he saw her hurrying, he'd slow down, but if he got thinking his deep thoughts, the long steps would begin again. She was seriously contemplating tying his shoelaces together so that they could walk together easier. Traffic was thinning as they approached Main Street. Abbott and Joe were doing a final round in the squad car. They honked as they passed Julia and Morgan, then turned up Jonquil Avenue towards the field. Seeing even from a distance that everything in town was in order, they walked up a side street towards the field. Julia was holding Morgan's arm tightly as he was getting that faraway look in his eyes, and she knew his stride was about to double. She was squeezing so hard it brought him out of his reverie, and smiling, he slowed down. At the field, he checked the freezer a final time. The temperature was dropping nicely, and the ice cream would be perfect by tomorrow afternoon. They looked at the bandstand. The music had been sorted, stacked, hole punched, and bound. Farmers market was clean, neat, and orderly. Prices were marked, and people were laying in chairs, keeping an eye on the merchandise. Rocky would spend half the night driving around, keeping an eye on things. Josh would be at the field early to do his own checks and would call Morgan if anything was amiss. Standing at the back of the field, they looked out over the setup approvingly. After all the times that had been accomplished, the setup had become almost second nature. With a sigh of contentment, they walked over the grass towards the hot dog hut. The evening was coming on, and the hot dog hut was lighting up like a beacon for the weary and hungry travelers. Suddenly, the sprinklers turned on, spraying water over everything, including them. Peter Piper from the sanitation department decided to do his testing of the system just when it was the least needed, hell, or wanted. Seeing Morgan scoop up Julia and running with her in his arms to the nearest gate, he hurriedly shut them off and ran up to them, apologizing. Morgan patted him on the shoulder and thanked him for the cooling shower. Been a long day and a hot one. The water felt good. Peter got a slight smile on his face. Oh, you want I should put it on again? Morgan's brow furrowed and went over. Don't you even think about it. He grinned and straightened up and then headed to the hot dog hut, still carrying Julia in his arms. Realizing it would do no good to expostulate with her husband, she allowed herself to be carried away with her arms around his neck and her head on his chest. And we've been reading now for about 16 minutes. God, that was a quick one. Let me check something. Tell you what, let's go right into the next chapter. Let's do a two for Friday. This one's husband and wives. It's about as long, so that should work out pretty good. Give me a minute. Let me get a quick drink. Delicious. Okay, like I said, this one's husband and wives. Rocky was in the kitchen when he was startled by a frantic pounding on the screen door. It was Sunday, so it couldn't have been one of the school kids. Possibly one of the 4-H teens. Well, he thought, only one way to find out. At the door was Julia, looking worried. Oh, come on in, what's the problem? Julia stood in the doorframe, panting as though she'd run all the way from town. It's your father-in-law. Rocky sat Julia down and poured her a glass of water. What's the problem? Well, it's after 9 and he's still in bed. He's moaning something terrible. It sounds like he's dying. He won't let me call the ambulance and won't go to the hospital. I've tried to help him, but he just pulled the cover up to his chin and rolled over. I don't know what's wrong. I was hoping you or Agnes might know. Agnes was coming down the stairs, pulling on her robe. Hey, Rocky, what's the date? Well, September 20th. What's that got to do with your dad? It's beginning of fall. The season's changing, so he's getting a cold. She pulled out a large pot and got a chicken out of the refrigerator. Julia sat there with her mouth hanging open and her eyes wide. You mean all this fuss is over a cold? Agnes asked Rocky to cut up the vegetables and fill the pot with water. No, sorry, Julia. I meant to give you something I put together when you two got together serious. But you both popping off on your honeymoon and then getting so busy when you got back made me forget to give it to you. She went into the TV room /office /Morgan's bedroom and got a journal from the desk. She handed it to Julia. On the cover, an ornate script, it read, The Care and Feeding of Marvin Morgan. Julia laughed and flew through the pages. Under schedule were dates for when Morgan would develop colds or other illnesses. Apparently, he was regular as clock. Along with each illness, there were appropriate meals to ease the symptoms. Most concerned chicken soup with special seasonings, though chili also figured prominently for each winter illness. For a cold, the special seasoning was plenty of cayenne pepper and oregano. To drink was hot tea with lemon and honey and just a touch of Vicks mixed in. My mom made me one when she was in the hospital after the accident. As she got worse, she had me sit with her, and she often dictated the rest. As we neared the end, I saw her fading. She held on long enough to finish it. Dad knows about it, but I never bring it out when he's around. One look, and he breaks down in tears. For an hour, they talked as the soup simmered on the stove. When it was ready, they all sampled it and declared it a success. Half the pot went with Julia, and Rocky carefully placed it, still hot, in her car. Driving carefully, she made it home with minimal spillage. Carrying the pot inside, she reheated it and made a pot of tea and to take to her husband. Morgan was sitting up in bed and looking miserable. His bottom lip was pouting and his eyes were streaming. His face brightened when he smelled of homemade chicken soup and a pot of tea proceeded Julia. She tucked a pillow behind him, tucked a napkin under his chin, and placed the tray on his lap. When he finished, he held out the bowl for another helping with a pleading look and words of praise and thanks. She placed the tray onto a bed table and went out to refill the bowl. When she returned, he was fast asleep with a smile on his lips. Downstairs, she opened the journal Agnes had given her. In it were her father's favorite movies, music, stars, and places. She read page after page of Morgan's history with side notes on what effect they had had on him immediately and months afterwards. There were humorous anecdotes about his abilities as a father and things he expected of a woman in dress and demeanor. Seeing that Morgan was an old-fashioned gentleman, and while he tried to be up to date, he was rooted in the past. She brought out her own diary and made a new entry. September 20th, 1988. I just learned that my brave, fearless husband becomes 5 years old when he has a cold. He was petulant with pouting lips, a frowning face, and a forlorn attitude. I learned it required chicken vegetable soup to bring him comfort. He is bundled in a blanket, cocoon, and sleeping with a smile on his face. I now have a whole slew of recipes to combat all his moods and illnesses. I'm learning that he has two sides that are completely different. The side he shows in public, friendly but stern-visaged, ready to help anyone or tackle any wrongdoer. I asked Agnes if Rocky was the same. She says that when Rocky gets sick, he works out even harder to raise his temperature, as he puts it, to burn the bad out. Apparently, Rocky is similar in temperament to his father-in-law, both as sheriff and the husband. Morgan's private side is warm, loving, and caring in a way I never expected. I have never had a man who kisses me on the neck so much or who spends so much time brushing my hair before bed. He even braids it and puts it up. You must ask Agnes if he did this for her mother. One thing he does I'm eternally thankful for. He rubs my feet. With his big hands and my little feet, he does a thorough job in no time. You know, it's funny, for such a strong man, he can be so gentle. He also has a wonderful habit of picking flowers that are growing wild and sticking them in my hair. Horace never paid me half the attention as Marvin does. It's very refreshing. Oh, I made another discovery last night. He talks in his sleep. He must have been dreaming. Sorry. He was dreaming about being a sheriff in the Wild West with Rocky as his deputy, but Rocky was in his early teens. I'm going to have to buy a tape recorder and save his adventures. Last night's was very exciting with him and Rocky riding the trails after a gang of desperados. He started out talking about Mary. I assume he was speaking to his first wife. After a while, he changed to me, much to my surprise. I can't be jealous of a memory, especially someone he loves so dearly. If he loves me half as much as he loved her, it's going to be enough. We rarely speak of our past partners, and I don't know if that's good or bad. I really need to go over to Rocky and Agnes's farmhouse more often and see if I can help with the baby. Mary is really the sweetest child. I was going to try and learn knitting, but Agnes showed me Mary's drawer full of baby clothes. So wondered if there's any yarn left in the state of Ohio. I'm told that Larry, Deputy Talbot's baby, has just as much. Need to get with Agnes and see if I can help with taking care of the sick and ill as she does. I don't want to take over, but she has a child now and I'm here in town. I'd like to do my share. Agnes has told me her secret about how she kept Papa happy. She'd wear dresses when he was home and change into slacks when he wasn't. Gordon was shocked as hell the first time he saw her in public wearing pants after she got married. Well, he seems to tend to let it be. Frankly, I prefer dresses, especially on hot days. So much cooler. Whoop, the baby's up and whining. I'll have to go bring him some more hot tea and fill up another hot water bottle. I'm thankful his colds don't last more than a day or two at most. At least that is what the journal tells me. I wonder what he'll be like when I get a cold. Do I dare go infantile as well? What a devious thought. Rocky was sitting behind the desk daydreaming. It'd been quiet for a Sunday. It had only 24 people in, 3 phone calls, and 1 emergency run to Calvert's place to help rescue a trapped pig in a fence. Nice, quiet day. He was thinking about the journal Agnes had given to Julia. What would he put in a journal about Agnes? Well, she rarely caught cold or, in fact, any illness. Odd because she usually was out ministering to people who were sick a lot. She'd had to back off a little since Mary was born, but as long as he was home, she went. He never figured out what kind of hotline she had that let her know when someone got sick. It was as if she had some sort of sixth sense, thought about what pleased her. She liked having her shoulders and neck massaged. She loved having her hair brushed. She would purr like a cat when he rubbed her feet or massaged her scalp. She took showers at her family home and baths at the snow house. Well, that wasn't surprising, really. The snow house had a deep clawfoot tub she could practically swim in. Like that, both of them preferred the simple pleasures, long walks, eating at the diner or hot dog hut, fishing, or just being together. Her wants were simple, and it took so little to please her, it was always a pleasure to do so. You'd bring home flowers or pick up a bag of penny candy from the co-op of all the candies she loved. He could bring home scented lotion, and she'd go into ecstasy. She was a consummate cook, and she had a skill he could never begin to match. She appreciated it when he'd get up early and fix breakfast or make a casserole for dinner. Sometimes they would just sit outside in the grass looking over the farm, leaning against the huge oak tree. No words had to be spoken at times like these, just being together in peace and quiet was enough. Rocky smiled as he thought of the one area that Agnes was extremely competitive in, fishing. The fact that she had caught the big one was her proudest boast, and she'd bring it out whenever they stopped by the lake and fished for dinner. Agnes was adding a note to her own journal about Rocky. Flipping over the pages, she marveled at the man he had become. She saw so much of her father in him, the strength combined with gentleness, the caring that took in not only his family, but everyone he met. It was so rare that Rocky got angry that she often wondered what it would take to make him furious. Now, she'd seen it recently when he saw the note Sheba had received. That was what it took to bring out the bear in the man. That anyone could hurt a child like Sheba was unthinkable. It was a shame that there were people like Darren who could take advantage of someone's trusting nature and use it against them. She felt a cold chill and dizziness as she contemplated all the evil that Darren had done. She had seen Rocky with the kids when they came to work on their plots, and he was off. If he was outside, they'd run up to him and lead him out to their plots, eager to show him their plants. He listened, even learned, he said, and expressed amazement with a sincerity that made the kids jump for joy. He was patient and kind. She had seen that gentleness and kindness years ago. But she'd also seen him protect people who couldn't protect themselves. It was the way he protected them that intrigued her. He didn't leap in and act as a shield. He encouraged them to stand up for themselves. He'd guide things, and if a fight was inevitable, he made sure they were a part of it. They had done the lion's share, but they were in there swinging. She seen it firsthand with Rocky and Josh, and afterwards Josh became his shadow. One thing Rocky couldn't do well was cook. He did all right with simple meals, breakfast, soup, and stews and such, but anything more than that, and he was over his head. He always acknowledged that she was the head cook and he was the assistant and did the washing up. She looked at Mary, who was awake in her lap and smiling up at her. Your dad's going to be very, very protective of you, young lady. Don't worry, though, you have enough of both of us, and that he'll trust you to make the right decisions and be there if you don't. She held her daughter close. We're very lucky to have two men who love us like Grandpa and Daddy. Morgan looked over at Julia sleeping beside him. His hand reached out and massaged her back and stroked her head. He never thought he could ever love again after losing Mary. Somehow Julia had broken down the walls and let that special love light and warmth back into his life. He marveled at how much his heart had opened to her gentle warmth and loving care. When he met Julia, he was frightened at the feelings that were awakening. He felt he was betraying his memory of Mary. He desperately tried to harden his heart. But Julia was a widow and understood what he was going through, especially as she was going through the same feelings herself. She had resigned herself to a warm friendship. It took some time and experience to allow the change to happen. His mind wandered aimlessly over the night he brought Julia home. Slightly intoxicated and drinking till the tavern was closing, they had walked unsteadily home. They had intended to go to Julia's place, but his home was closer. He was making a pot of coffee when Agnes came down the stairs. Instinctively, he hid Julia behind himself. Agnes went upstairs and laughed like teenagers almost trapped by mom or dad. When Agnes found Julia coming out of the bathroom, she had knocked on his bedroom door. Much to his surprise, she hadn't been mad or embarrassed, but had welcomed Julia to the family and admonished him only that it took him so long to bring her home. He'd been afraid to embarrass his daughter to find out her father still had needs and desires, that he still was a man in every sense of the word. As usual, she had accepted things as they were without question or comment, other than a warm welcome for someone he cared deeply for. He rolled onto his side and enveloped his bride in a loving embrace. Michaela sat holding Larry on her lap and gently bouncing him on her knee. My God, he's a long one. Of course he had to be. A man as tall as Talbot wasn't going to have a shrimp of a son. Talbot was in the garage, banging away and making a rocking horse for his son. On the wall hanging was a sled and a bed he'd also made. She'd never known he was a talented woodworker. It was just another of the many things she'd discovered about her husband recently. The difference a few years had made in him was a wonder. He'd come out of his shell of anger and was the warm, loving man she'd married years ago. Before the war, before the hatred, before coming to this town. Now here they had a home, a family, and a community. They had friends, real, true friends. After dinner, Talbot and Michaela were laying on the couch with Larry between them. He reached over and brushed some of her hair from her brow. You know why I love you so much? She held his hand and kissed it. Maybe. Tell me anyways. 'Cause you stayed with me when I was at my worst. Most women would have left, but you didn't. You loved me enough to trust me and in us. And I think about how mad I was all the time and how mean to you, snapping your head off, not being the husband you needed. I get so damn mad at myself. She looked up into his eyes. I know, but you're back to being you, the man I married. I mean, the last 3 years have been like heaven. Having finally got a family feels even better. Lawrence, I always knew you were in there somewhere. If I'd have known what it took to break down the walls. Held a finger over her lips. Don't say it. No matter how bad things got, no, I was never so far gone I'd lay a hand on you in anger. Man who's a real man won't ever do that. My dad taught me that. I'm just glad we came to the right place and met the right people. You know what else I love about you? She's not sheeplicity. And I kept my finger. You laughed. Honey, I don't care about that. You do look nice though. But it's what's in your heart that matters, and your heart is full of love. You're strong too. I found that out when you took on that asshole who tried to molest you. I wish you would have told me. I'd have killed him. She nodded in agreement. Well, that's why I didn't. Deputy has to follow the law too. I'm glad you became a deputy. You're a good one, and maybe one day you'll be the sheriff. Hell, I like that. That would consider the suggestion. Yeah, it'd be nice to be a sheriff. You'd had a taste of what it was like. Maybe another couple of years, though, when Larry was older. All right, I'll tell you what. The next one's Cold Comfort, and that's a little bit longer, so we're going to stop now. Yeah, that's a good long one. It's about twice as what we've just read. So that's it for today. I am going to stop now. So I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you listening in, and hope you'll be here on Tuesday when we read the next chapter, Cold Comfort. It's going to get really cold. I wrote that when we were at our worst winter here, so I had a lot to work with. So anyways, that's it. I look forward to seeing you again in a couple of days. Be good and be good to yourselves. Bye.